Lakers offseason is basically in the books. DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia, and if you got some high hopes, to do Thero in, Dorian Finney-Smith. And I want to at least acknowledge Jordan Goodwin because I do think he had enough moments last season that mattered. Those guys are out for the time being. I'm not expecting much more or anything of significance to happen before training camp opens. So with that in mind, I've got two questions for you, a two-part question regarding the offseason moves. First part, Anthony, how well do you think the Lakers did in addressing their overall needs?
Well, seeing as they have a starting center now, I would say they did pretty well. First and foremost, I would say that was the top priority, and it was the top priority in a few ways, right? Luka Dončić gets to the Lakers, tells, Rob Pelinka says after the fact that Luka kind of mentioned to him that he needed a center. He prefers to play with a lob threat. Rob goes out and tries to does actually trade, right, for Mark Williams, and then obviously the rest of that is history. So they've known that they needed that center. I don't think they thought in a million years coming into this offseason that they would be able to get one of the ilk of DeAndre Ayton without having to give up anything. I think they actually entered the offseason prepared to trade for a center if need be to address the starting gig. So I think there, in that way, I would say that they've done really, really well for themselves. I still am a little concerned about their point of attack on defense. Now, you do address that a little bit with Marcus Smart. He's had a tough go of it the last couple of years, so we'll see where he's at. But yeah, I would say they've had a solid B of an offseason with the possibility over the course of the season to turn it into an A.
Well, that actually leads me to the next part of the question I wanted to ask, which is how well do you think they did based against or graded against, because you just gave it a B, realistic expectations for the offseason, like in terms of what they could have realistically accomplished? Because in all honesty, I don't think an A-plus offseason was really even possible for them.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to present the question. The only thing is, I don't think it was unfair to hope that they would move the first-round pick. I don't think it was ever realistic as an expectation that they would, just given that Rob Pelinka has never entered a regular season without at least one first-round pick to be able to move. But, that said, I would still say that for fans that were kind of hoping for a more complete offseason, I don't know that was completely unrealistic. So I would say a solid B, given all the context, and then I would say, given expectations, maybe like a B plus. I don't know that I would be willing to go as far as the A range. I'm a tough grader, I guess.
Talking with Anthony Irwin, the host of the Lakers Lounge podcast, and his regular listeners know he is a very difficult grader. Also, the senior Lakers reporter for Clutch Points, Lakers Talk, Andy Kamenetzky, 710 ESPN. There's been a lot of talk, Anthony, about what the Lakers' starting lineup should be, and really the fifth spot, because I think Luka, LeBron, Austin, and DeAndre Ayton are essentially in pen, and it's really, I think, a question between Rui or Marcus Smart, I guess, unless JJ really develops some trust in Vando and Vando could stay healthy. But I think it's really between Rui and Smart. I've been on record as saying I think it should be Smart. What do you think?
I think it should be Smart as well. I agree with you there. There's been a lot of the argument. I think one of the better arguments that I've had for Rui is, well, they won 50 some odd games last year with Rui as the starter for the vast majority of the season. He played really well. He certainly didn't play so poorly that he should be demoted in any sense of the term. But still, it's like, I don't know how much continuity I care about from a team that got their butts kicked in the first round of the playoffs. That's just not something. It'd be one thing if it was shifting around the starting group of a team that won a championship the year prior. That's when you're like, well, you don't really want to mess with what's working. But in this case, that wasn't working. And it is kind of an awkward fit with Rui and LeBron and Luka all kind of needing to guard the same position. So you kind of, I would put Smart in there. He also slots Austin in a more sensible defensive role that I think makes him a better offensive player as well. And then most importantly, the point of having Marcus Smart out there is to have him hound the other team's best player. Well, that becomes really difficult to do if you're missing that best player, if they're missing that player's entire first shift or a big chunk of that first shift.
Yeah.
And so, then maybe you hope that you get Smart out there for the second half of that first shift, and then you try to do the funny math to try to make it work. But then you're also having Smart and Vando come out, in the same group, and your spacing there's kind of wonky. So, yeah, to me, from a pure basketball standpoint, it's a pretty clear choice here. And then, as far as Rui goes, you're in a contract year, man. Go ahead and mope if you want.
Yeah, for what it's worth, we're talking with Anthony Irwin, senior Lakers reporter for Clutch Points, also the host of the Lakers Lounge podcast. Brian and I just appeared on it. We had a really good conversation, so you guys should check that out. Lakers Talk, Andy Kamenetzky, 710 ESPN. I kind of feel like Rui, and maybe this is wish casting or just thinking well of him, I feel like as long as, because he's got to know at this point that the organization likes him, and that doesn't mean that they're going to just commit to him and make him a lifer, but it's pretty clear that they think well of him. I'd like to think that as long as his minutes stay at a certain level, and I think they will, just even if he comes off the bench, because he's still one of the best players on this team, and they still need to have him out there. I actually think he'll get more opportunities coming off the bench. I think he's going to get lost in a starting lineup with LeBron, Luka, Austin, and DeAndre Ayton. Like, he sometimes wasn't getting enough shots when Jackson Hayes was the center. And, like, Jackson can't create his own shot. Or, like, DFS being out there. And DFS is basically a catch-and-shoot guy. Like, I actually think if he leans into it and also knows, like, this is not a demotion, this is about floor combinations, he could have a real opportunity in front of him that I think he could lean into.
Well, you also, if you're Rui, you got to ask yourself, at this stage of my career, am I a bona fide starter on a championship team? Now, he probably thinks so, and I think he is talented enough to make that case for himself. But if the point here is to optimize your earnings here moving forward, showing a willingness to do whatever it takes to help a team win, that's what teams are prioritizing now.
Yeah.
So I just think, it would be tough, I think, especially at first. But the thing with Rui has always been, I do think he didn't, and I think he was right in not enjoying it. But when Darvin Ham had him coming off of the bench for the sake of Torian Prince or Cam Reddish or whoever, I could understand Rui kind of saying, like, what are we doing here? But you're coming off of the bench, and the guy that is starting is a former Defensive Player of the Year in that fifth spot that you were in previously. And when you sub in, you're going to be subbing in for LeBron James, and you're going to be subbing into a group that is going to be creating wide open jumpers for you all the same. So I don't know. I do think there's a way, and this is one of JJ Redick's, I think, strong suits is his ability to communicate with players and to outline these decisions. And he understands, being a former player, how important it is for a player to be on the same page with the coach as you get ready to make a decision like this. And I think if it all comes together, I think there is a way that this works out really well for all involved. And hell, I'm down to start the Rui 6 Man of the Year campaign. That'd be fun.
Let's do this. Rui for 6 Man. We're talking with Anthony Irwin. He is a senior Lakers reporter for Clutch Points, also the host of the Lakers Lounge. You mentioned before, like, the hope that some Laker fans had, or you yourself as both a fan and somebody that covers the team, that the Lakers would use that one first-round pick that they currently have at their disposal in some type of offseason move. Do you think that there's been anybody that was realistically available for them that would have been worth using it? Because it has to make sense. Like, as much as I know you've got Luka in his prime, you've got LeBron still playing at a high level, and there's certainly a chance that LeBron could end up the most talented player that Luka plays with as a Laker. Like, it's not impossible, but it still has to make sense because you only have so few assets left at this point. You can talk about asset management, bad job, whatever, but this is where they are. Do you think that there's been anybody the Lakers could have gotten that's actually worth using that pick on?
So there's a scenario where you could maybe move Gabe and Maxey and Dalton and maybe another expiring plus that first for Wiggins, and that would mean that you keep Rui and you bring in Wiggins, who would then start at the small forward spot. I think that would be something I'd be interested in. I have to hop on Fanspo to make sure that the math actually works there. But something along those lines where, and this is, I think, what the Lakers are going to be looking to do this season, where it's hard to build a contender when you're not currently a bona fide contender. It's hard to become that while moving a top 6 player on your roster. So if I'm going to move that first round pick, I'm going to try like hell to keep Rui, who is the one player who is kind of at the center of a lot of these trade scenarios. So what I wouldn't want to do is bring in an Andrew Wiggins for Rui and a first-round pick, because if that doesn't work out, you now don't have much leeway to do anything outside of that. But if you could have, in some way, shape, or form, brought in Wiggins without moving Rui, and if that cost you the first-round pick, I would have done that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I agree with you. You want to add Wiggins to the best pieces of what's already there. Like, even if you think Wiggins is a better positional fit for what the Lakers need over Rui, and I think you can actually make a pretty good argument, I don't think Andrew Wiggins is so much more talented, though, than Rui, that he basically completely offsets the absence of Rui. And then in a lot of ways, I think you're creating a bigger gap between Wiggins and maybe whoever else you think is sort of or close to Wiggins in the pecking order and everybody else. Like, in a lot of ways, I think the trade that you're describing, Rui and a pick and filler for Wiggins, it kind of just makes the Lakers more top-heavy as opposed to making them a better team. And I think that's the sort of thing the Lakers are going to have to look for. Last question for you. Because this is, I know, something you've been talking about a lot on Lakers Lounge, something I know Laker fans are talking about a lot. Austin Reaves and his future fit with the Lakers, part of a foundation moving forward with Luka. How confident are you in that fit with those guys, if not necessarily the 2 best players on the team, a big piece of that foundation?
That's the $35 million a year question.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I'll say about Austin. He, to this point in his time as a Laker, has done everything the Lakers have asked of him. And I think that's pretty astounding that he, at various points in his career, over the course of last season, was a primary offensive initiator, was a secondary primary or secondary offensive initiator, a tertiary one. And his numbers when Luka got there were still really good, and you look at the list of players who averaged 25 and 5 last season. It's a pretty selective group. So I think that I clearly believe in Austin Reaves' talent. My concern with Austin is his athleticism next to Luka Dončić, who also, even skinny Luka, isn't going to be a great athlete. So if you're going to have those 2 guys back there, everybody else at their positions have to be plus 2 elite athletes to make up for the athleticism that you don't have with Austin and Luka. And it's not impossible, but then, like, if typically athletes that are at that level maybe can't shoot, or they're also super expensive, and it becomes difficult to employ multiple guys in that range. So I think this season, like, there was a lot of talk on my show with my mailbags and comment sections and stuff like that. Should they trade Austin now? Should they do this? Should they do that? I don't think it made any sense to trade Austin this summer until you get a real good look at Luka and Austin together. And I think, very importantly, Luka and Austin and LeBron together, because the hope is that you eventually replace LeBron with another player in that range, right? So Austin becomes your 3rd best player there. And you got to see what that looks like athletically, defensively, offensively, and you see if he can fit there. And if not, I think Austin on a $30-ish million contract is also very movable.
He is Anthony Irwin. He is the host of the Lakers Lounge podcast. You can read his work as a senior Lakers reporter over at Clutch Points. We will do this again soon. Again, Brian and I just appeared on Lakers Lounge if you want to check out that episode. And Anthony was just on Locked On Lakers with us. Appreciate the time, brother. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.